You ever feel like you're just barely holding it together? Like you're physically here, but your mind's still stuck in a war zone halfway across the world? You're hyper alert, you can't sleep, and even your damn recliner starts to feel like a foxhole. That's where Ryan Reichert found himself. Imagine serving nearly 2 decades, earning your Ranger tab, leading troops in combat in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then transitioning into a job that slowly strips away your sense of purpose. The mission's over, the team's gone, and what's left? There's prescription meds, there's bourbon, there's the slow burn of isolation. But Ryan didn't stay down. This episode is your fix if you're battling invisible wounds, questioning your path, or chasing that post military adrenaline with all the wrong things. We talk about sobriety, we talk about survivor's guilt, broken marriages, faith, and the uphill climb toward finding a new mission. I also want to take a moment to raise awareness for something deeply important to our community, the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. This organization is working to build a permanent national memorial in Washington, D.C. to honor the service members, families, and civilians impacted by the global war on terrorism. This memorial serves as both a tribute to those who served and a way to ensure their sacrifices are recognized and remembered for generations to come. If you want to learn more or find out how you can support the mission, visit gwatmemorialfoundation.org. Now let's get into today's episode. Ryan, welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you here. It's really a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Greatly appreciate it. This is awesome to be part of all your hard work and dedication and being part of Drive On. It's really super excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Tell us a little bit about your background and your military career, and then eventually your transition into the corporate world, and kind of how you got involved, who you are, and your background, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long 46 year and change story, but just a small town boy from Hoople, North Dakota, little Tatertown, USA. It's 350 people, at least it was when I was growing up there a long time ago, back in the 70s. And it's one of those aspects where it was a good time, rural North Dakota. I mean, I guess everything in North Dakota is rural. But, you got to, play Army in the front yard of your best friend's house, by the school and, playing all the sports and everything else. It was it was a real blessing. And, I think that's where, similar to you, you have this pride, both my grandfathers were in the Navy, so it was one, and, my dad was a Vietnam veteran. So Hoople had like a very strong, the guys with the Legion, the VFW in the area and so forth, that it was just like this thing that, I think when I was 12, I think I was like, I'll either be a firefighter or a professional football player. And, I went to the University of North Dakota and, I ended up joining the Army, did ROTC there, and then was commissioned into the infantry in 2002, which was super cool. Second lieutenant. Nervous as all get up as I headed to Fort Benning and, went down there to the School for Boys in Columbus, Georgia. And it was one of those just super surreal experiences, airborne school, infantry officers basic course, Ranger school. And then I was supposed to go to mortar leaders course, but my wife at the time, she was getting her master's degree in Hawaii, which was our first duty station. So everyone's like, oh my goodness, she gets to go to Hawaii. It's going to be amazing. But, a little thing had happened called 9/11, and, we got there and, ended up deploying to Afghanistan after we did our full train up and everything. And so, that was really rough, just like, your time in Afghanistan was tough. And I know you've talked about that and shared in your book, and also, many times, being on air and so forth. And that was a tough deployment. I mean, it was a long year. Afghanistan's not a nice place.
No.
And, so coming back from that, I had PTSD really bad. And we had our first daughter, and back actually at Fort Benning. I returned, redeployed, and then I went straight to the Captain's Career Course in Fort Benning just a couple months after redeploying. And we had Lauren there, and we had bought our first house. And every night I just couldn't even, I'd hear noises. I'd check every window, check the doors, check on her. Like it was just, a struggle, and then fall asleep. And the same lazy boy that I have in my living room, today, was like kind of my security blanket. I could sleep in that thing for whatever reason once I guess I got tired enough.
Hmm.
And yeah, so from there, kind of, did a couple of company commands, thought about getting out of the Army about every 2 years. In second company command, actually, Apache Company 123 Infantry. We went to Iraq together in '09. Amazing group of young men and women, with 123 Infantry. And then came back to Fort Lewis, stayed there, and did a ACRC battalion S3XO job. And that was really awesome, because knowing your background as well, where you get the active component and the reserve or National Guard component, getting ready to deploy. And to think like you guys, knowing what you do on, in your, civilian professional career, and then like what you got to do to get ready to go, downrange is just something that, it's amazing. You are, a true blue American, in that aspect of both. I couldn't imagine being in corporate America and doing what you guys did in the National Guard, or in the reserves or whatever it may be, because it's just, like I'm just not good at focusing on like, like 2 to 5 things. I got like one thing, it's like super important thing, focus solely on that. And like, if you're thinking about this, like, that's
It's a lot of plates to
impressive.
keep spinning.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I suppose I had about, at that point, 10 years in. And I got hurt. I blew my Achilles out. And so I think I was a major at the time. And that was like kind of like the point of like, I'm like, what does my military career look like moving forward? Like to be operational again, and so forth. And I was always a tier 2 guy, like 25th Infantry Division, 2nd Infantry Division, and so forth. And after about a year of physical therapy, I got back to, being able to run again and everything. And I did deploy to Saudi Arabia. I had a good buddy of mine get me straight over there. We had this awesome idea. We'd get ready for the best Ranger competition together. And it was good that they couldn't fund it because, I certainly wasn't as strong as my good buddy Isaac. And, one of those things that, we got in good shape, but yeah, we didn't get to make it back to Fort Benning and execute that dream. And yeah, you fast forward a couple more years, Command and General Staff College, and went back to Hawaii, was a battalion S3 and XO there. Didn't deploy while we were back in Hawaii. We got ready to a few times and then just never launched. And yeah, it was pretty wild. Back to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, was an OC again there, and then did a year as a 2-stars XO at the Michigan Center Excellence. And that was like my first time really seeing behind the curtain, the great and powerful Oz or Army, kind of thing. It's this like, I'm glad it took that long to see, because I think I probably would have exited stage left like way early on in my career if I would have seen, just how wild and crazy things are to keep, the mighty green machine going. And yeah, after that, it was time to start thinking about retirement. And we ended up, we always wanted to retire in Washington State. We spent a lot of years there, met some great friends. And so that was the plan. Let's, get ready for retirement. How do we get back to Washington State? And so what do you do, right? You make a deal with the devil. And I took another deployment. Yeah, so we moved the family, built a retirement house. And my best friend, Chris, and I had been planning this awesome, joint venture, for being financial advisors in the same building, same everything. He had been doing it for years. And, so I think it was like 2008 when we met, and probably 2009, we started planning this great thing that was going to happen. And, well, every couple of years he'd ask me to, why don't you get out and come on over to this side? And, didn't. And, but we finally were going to make it happen. And this would have been like 2019, 2020. It's about a couple of years before retirement. And, yeah, I went back over to Saudi Arabia, and, this is where my PTSD like really came back at, in the fall of 19, Abcake was bombed. Probably a lot of folks don't remember that, being 5 odd years ago now, but it just riddled me. It just shook me, like, to not be able to, that control of, the drone attacks at night, and, some of the Iranian missile attacks that, did or did not happen per se. And, I struggled, with just could never sleep. Insomnia was just riddling me. And so, came back from that deployment, and the family, COVID happened, and they wanted to move back to the Midwest. My ex-wife, originally from Minnesota, me being from North Dakota, it was perfect. We'll move to Minneapolis. The kids could be next to their best friends. And, so leap of faith, I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do professionally. Like, I have no idea. I know there's a lot of decent Fortune 500 companies in Minneapolis, but I wasn't as secure as walking right into this financial advising job and so forth. And, so we did it. We built the house, the kids moved, and, I lived with my friend in their basement before I, retired. And, I got a job. It was a good Fortune 500 job. It was the right, I was a program manager, risk management, department. So, we built that, team together, and it was, it felt pretty good, like starting to build the team, but, it got within 6 months kind of boring. It was like, the standard TPS cover letter on every report, a little Office Space there for those that have watched that great movie. And, it just, I found myself extremely depressed, my body being riddled with, all the, bumps and bruises, the whole, just head to toe broken. I started abusing my prescription drugs, and, washing them down with, whatever the newest, IPA was, and bourbon. And, I found myself a real mess. I gained about 50 pounds. I was a real a-hole. I mean, just, my family, my friends, just miserable. I'd lost that connection, that team, that camaraderie. And, it was ugly. It was really, really ugly. And, in the end, it cost me, everything, my family, 25-year marriage, my kids, they're starting to come back, like probably feeling abandoned. The dad, like, thanks, Dad, you moved us to where we wanted to move, and then you kind of like left us high and dry, and then I lost my Fortune 500 job. And this is all of this happened after I actually sobered up.
Oh, wow.
So, I've been sober 16 months and change now. Life's never been better. And, I'm getting to talk to amazing Americans like you, on a Friday night. And, I'm super excited. I mean, like, look at this, perma smile, and, it's not drug or alcohol induced. And,
That's the real deal.
That to me is just pure bliss. And, and then getting to talk, with another veteran, it's just, to me, one of those aspects where, it's similar to meeting a friend of Bill W's in the program. It's just, you have this connection. It's just natural, brother from another mother kind of thing. And it just, you just know that, we've been through some stuff. And, I know if I called you at 3 a.m., like, if we weren't obviously X states apart,
Right.
you'd come a running, and all you'd ask is, whose car are we taking, to go do whatever we got to do.
Right.
And, you can't replace that kind of stuff. It doesn't, we're special.
That's something that I've noticed with this podcast, that, with the other veterans that I talk to on this show. Anytime there's a veteran, I very often have never met the person prior to
Right.
the interview. Kind of like us, we have not met in person yet. This is kind of the first time meeting, but by the end of the conversation, it's almost like we've known each other for years. It feels that way sometimes. It's not every time. There's certain personalities that maybe just don't click quite as well, but a lot of times it's like there's a lot of shared experiences, and you just kind of feel like you get the other person. Like we're kind of on the same page with a lot of things. It feels like, and especially when it comes to some of the experiences that we've had and difficulties along the way and everything, despite them being completely different experiences. You had your experiences, and I wasn't there for any of those experiences,
Right.
and vice versa.
Well, but
but we still kind of understand where each other's coming from. Like I can understand how, rocket attacks would trigger some PTSD. Like that makes complete sense to me. Where someone else might not quite understand it, or maybe conceptually they understand it, but not like in actual
Yeah.
practical application of it. Like how does that actually work? But
Yeah. Like how it instantly, I mean, shoot, like the other day I was like vacuuming the house. I had like, ear pods in, jamming out, and someone came over, backs like turned, like, and I'm just going to town vacuuming, and that tap on the shoulder or whatever I mean, I think like the vacuum went into the other room. Thank goodness, like they stepped back, because when I turned, it was just like natural,
oh yeah,
or the kid that drops a can of soup in the grocery mart, behind you,
yeah,
and you just like, hit the floor almost. It's this, it's weird
there's,
how that happens, once you got that trauma, post traumatic stress disorder, it's one of those, like, I think of my dad today. I mean, shoot, it's been, I don't know, 50 odd years since he was in Vietnam. And like to watch him sleep, like to sit in a chair and sleep. I mean, he just like shaking and like, just all kinds of stuff. And it's just whatever's going on inside of him,
yeah,
isn't never stopped, I guess. And,
sure,
it's just too bad, because you don't, unless you've been there. I mean, I got it, like you can have PTSD from a lot of different things,
oh
from
yeah,
abuse, from a car accident. I mean, shoot, like wrecking your bike, like playing maybe, depending on like what, certain situations you're in after that. If you have someone that, certainly brings trauma to your life on a daily basis too, that can, keep you, that knows how to like put the screws to you a little bit.
that's right.
You know, we're we're easily or easier to manipulate, I think, too. Like, depending on like if you have a boss that, like might be a little pushier, like, cause like I'm certainly a people pleaser, and, want to get, like that straight A gold star, whatever it is,
Yeah,
be the best. And, you can take advantage of somebody like, me. And, I don't know how you are with it, but like, it's like, hey, I need 110% from you, and I was already given 110%. So that means I'm going to crank it up a little bit,
yeah. So now it's 120.
yeah, right. So yeah, to me, I just think how it ends up being where if you don't work on yourself, like, your mental aptitude, your mindfulness, say meditation, just strengthening that muscle. Yeah, you can just turn. I mean, I just think about how weak I was, turn into the bottle, turn into things that could numb the pain and help you sleep. It's like after how many days of not being able to sleep, like what will you do to try to sleep? And your
Damn
mind
near
just,
anything.
yeah, exactly. And you're not, you know,
Not in your right
yeah, you're
mind
just
at
not,
that point,
yeah,
right?
exactly. You're just so unhappy, because like you, how do you put it? It's like the side of the greatest adrenaline or dopamine hit, I mean, is like being in combat. I mean, there's
Hmm.
not a drug out there that I've done, that like, has given me that same rush or high of, charging into, obviously lead flying in your direction or whatever. And not that I want to do it again,
Yeah,
anymore, or even after the first couple times it happened, I didn't want to do it again. But, if you're thinking about a way to, like inject something into you, that was it. That was the aspect of the rush you're looking for. And
and that's what you find with a lot of veterans too is they kind of turn into adrenaline junkies. Whether
yeah,
it's high risk activities, skydiving, or what is it, motocross, or whatever, like those
right.
types of activities, or I don't even other risky things that you shouldn't be doing, but you do it anyways. And whether it's drugs or stepping out on your wife or whatever, like people do these things, and it's like they want the rush of that adrenaline rush, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that they want to do that thing, it's just they're looking for that adrenaline rush. And it's almost like a drug addict is looking for that high, and they'll go just about anywhere to find that high. And I think, and I'm not a doctor or a scientist or anything like that, I don't know exactly if this is true or not, but it feels like it probably affects your brain in a similar way. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, like you say, I have no idea. I'm like I got a bullshit degree, in criminal justice, and I mean, my master's with Command and General Staff College. So I mean, it was just like hope to be like a professor of military science or whatever one day when you
sure.
have lieutenant colonel. That's really why I got my master's degree. But I guess in it all, the good Lord had a plan. Of like this is how you learn to research. Like one day you'll write books, and it'll be like you got to read lots of books to write a book. So
Yeah.
like let's get you started. And yeah, so I mean, I really do think though it is just the way this thing's wired to everything else, and yeah, it's looking for once you hit those highs, whatever it is, if it's drugs, if it's I mean, alcohol's a depressant, but I mean, once you hit a certain point, it's all about just the numbing of whatever pain, grief, suffering that you have, that you're going through. And it's not good, seek professional help, talk to a friend. I mean, that's the biggest thing is like, I think of all my buddies that, I had, and that maybe for you too, like the survivor's guilt aspect of it and how it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, how the hell did I make it out of that? And, like they, I mean,
Yeah.
for you, you question that all the time. Or, if they have kids and like you see their kids and they're like, they'll never know their dad the way, I mean, at least I was old enough to remember how they're, that they missed that because they were little.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, having the survivor's guilt, is one of the things that I've had to learn over time is that, yeah, you can feel bad, you can, feel down on yourself and all that stuff, but it's not, none of that's going to bring the person back. And,
No.
that's, I mean, it's unfortunate. I wish there was a magic button I could press and have the person come back, but it's not going to happen. And so what do you do with that? Right. So, you got to take that and think like, what would this person want me to do with my remaining days, with days, weeks, months, years that I have left? I don't know the future. I don't know how long I could get hit by a bus tonight, and like and that's it for me. But I might have decades left, and what would that person be telling me if they were still here and saw me wasting away years of my life that they don't have the opportunity to live? But I'm wasting away that time. They would whoop my ass. I can tell you that much.
I mean, I never like, I mean, I still have the letters, the deployment letters of like, hey, I guess if you're getting this, things didn't go as planned.
Yeah.
And, I think it lays it, I think they laid it out. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was just like, I hope you live, a life in such a way that, you don't like regret what's happened and know that it's like, you're supposed to live. Like, that's why they call it life, it's to live it. I mean, and so, to me, that's a struggle though. I understand. I get it. You know, I mean, knowing that, it's almost like I struggle probably more so. Like I think about like post-divorce, and the grief and knowing, the part that I played in my dysfunction in it. And it's almost worse knowing that they're here though. And, like 25 years, like for me, I'm just like, I don't quit, right? Like, it's like, I'm not going to give up. I mean, yeah, maybe I gave up on choices I made or whatever in it. But when I look at thinking about like, what would you do for a Klondike bar? Like, what would you do like for your marriage? Like even, from that perspective. Right. And so, but it's just the friendships, any type of relationship where the person's still alive and you're like, I'm pretty sure there's this guy, called Jesus Christ that like to be more like him, like we forgive. And, so that to me, is who's I was, now of late, being a born again Christian where I'm like, like someone, this hand came down into the pit and helped me out, and it wasn't the people that I thought it was going to be. And I think that's what hurts more than anything. So like when I think about the survivor's guilt, like, just like you said, Scott, like that's that aspect of like if they could, they'd be the one pulling you out of that pit, like, and say, just knock it off. Let's go. Let's like get back on the horse and live. And, the things that they love to do, like, maybe it wasn't your favorite thing, but like you do it for them then,
Yeah,
or, if they had kids, like you were part of their lives to teach them things that they would have wanted to teach their kids,
sure.
and so forth. And so, yeah, to me, it's really interesting, I guess, when I think more about that today and see it, and that grief that I have, and the losses that I've taken, in the last few years, and know though that it's normally like divine protection or redirection or deflection or whatever you want to call it, because it's saving my soul today.
Hmm.
And yeah, I had like this black tarnished heart, and it's like I'll remove that, because yeah, I wasn't nice, I was like so cold hearted when it came to, basically just, how I treated people. I was like, like, oh, your life's not that bad. Like, have you ever been here?
Yeah,
Have you ever had this happen to you? Like, how many times have you slept outside, like, or you've missed meals or whatever, the deal. Like,
yep,
you've lived it.
yep.
And yeah, so I struggled with that because I had no peace. And, so I'd always look at people as like, yeah, tell me your real problems, like, let me know what you've
Yeah,
really been through. We've all been through stuff. So nowadays I know that it's real, like, because, I've had my heart broken now, and like for real, and not like some teenage love story, it was supposed to be,
right.
for the rest of your life. And, yeah, that's a tough one for me today. I struggle with that, or friendships and stuff where you're just like, wow, we're really that emotionally immature that, like, two grown ass adults can't have a conversation or talk about life in such a way, where pride and ego doesn't get in the way, but unfortunately it does get in the way at times.
It
And,
does.
you
Yeah.
know, so,
So I want to just kind of rewind for a second here. So you were talking about earlier a time period where you were dealing with some PTSD, like the the recliner was basically your security
yeah.
blanket, and then you deployed again, and the PTSD kind of kicked back in. Was there a time in between there where those symptoms kind of went away, or did they kind of linger throughout that whole time period?
I don't think they ever went away. I think it's just this aspect of like what I believed was tolerable,
Oh, okay.
like I was never somebody that, this whole like you need 8 hours of sleep or whatever. Like I've never gotten 8 hours of sleep. I don't even know. I mean, kind of thing.
Right.
And so from that perspective, I don't believe like it would ever like went away.
Sure.
It might have got better at times, depending on, the stressors of life and how you allow that to creep in. Um, I know I definitely, '09 deployment to Iraq. Like I left these guys, I had almost 2 years with them. I didn't take an HHC company, so we could deploy together in Apache company, and I wouldn't change it for the world, but I did have to leave them like halfway through that deployment. And it was going to talk about just sheer, like I remember sleeping on the floor, and I want to say it must have been Balad. Anyways, at the airport, like, like the boys dropped me off. It was super cool. One of my MGS platoon leader become the scout platoon leader. And he's like, absolutely, sir. We'll take you. I'd love to drive you out, out of country. And I remember sleeping on the floor and like crying,
Hmm.
just broken, just, thinking like leaving your little boys. I mean,
Yeah, I get
they
that.
were amazing. They were just so amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I came home, I mean, that's when I got probably really bitter, like having to leave. They were in country. I came home, and then that next summer, seeing them again, and knowing that they did all make it home was amazing. That was pretty special.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I struggled through those years. I mean, there's those years where I was drinking a lot, especially, you get those assignments that, are a little chill, you're not going to take a deployment. You might be TDY a lot, so you're
Hmm.
like, hitting the hotel bars, like if you're, wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And sounds terrible, right? I'm sure the civilians are like, yeah, I'm glad my, hard-earned tax money's going, when guys are TDY, they're drinking it away or whatever. But yeah, it is really interesting how you bring that up though. Cause yeah, like I do struggle with that. The recliner, like there's probably many times I probably should have went in the trash. I mean, there's no 100-mile-an-hour tape holding it together. It's still in pretty good shape, but it's ugly, it's brown, and like shit brown. And it's magic. I can sleep in it, like just that. I don't know if it's last night or the night before. I probably slept in it for 3 or 4 hours. And yeah, it is. It's just that it's like your whoopee, right? Like, I mean,
Sure.
that thing's, you put one of those on, and poncho
that's
liner, magical. And
that's better than PT belt for protection. I mean, nothing's getting through there.
I haven't heard that in a while. The good old PT belt, I tell you. Yeah. How many
So,
guys on a run have been hit by a car? That thing,
yeah,
like,
right.
it's insane.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, I think PTSD is one where I've seen a lot of it with my dad. Like, he lives in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And actually, we were just talking a couple hours ago, the more I think about it. And he had a ketamine. He does ketamine treatments now for his PTSD.
okay.
And that seems to help him. And then he does what is it? The ganglion, something or other shot, the eyeball.
Stoic ganglion block.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He does that one too, and I think his PTSD is both like his childhood upbringing, like his dad, like I said, I want to say it was like 3 years in the Pacific, so I know Grandpa Reich definitely, shell shock, battle fatigue, kind of thing,
Sure.
that aspect, right?
Yep.
And so I think dad suffered from both, just a tough upbringing in childhood, and then, heading off at, 19 to Vietnam, and knowing from the times that, we've talked about different things that happened to him, different things that happened to me, that, you're just like, I was at least first deployment 24, 25, somewhere in there, so first lieutenant. And I mean, being a platoon leader, you got 30 bubbas protecting you, like, I mean, that's a different story than being like, Private Reichert in Vietnam, or, whatever dad was. I mean, I think he made E5 and he got busted or whatever. And, when he was a specialist when he got out, Spec 4. So, but yeah, so seeing that, I mean, that's hard because I mean, he's just riddled with it, and
Yeah.
he's a recovering alcoholic. So that's an amazing story in itself. He's been sober
Sure.
40 years. But that doesn't solve all of it, right? Like they just removes the drugs or the alcohol. You still have to. There's a problem, I mean, the symptoms, just the pain, portion of it that we cover up, and
Yeah, there's a reason
yeah,
why you were using the drugs or the alcohol in the first place to
yeah,
numb some of the pain or kind of cover up whatever it is that you're going through. And so without dealing with that underlying cause, you might risk falling back into that same trap, and that's
yep,
not a great thing
yeah,
not a great place to be in, I guess is the way to put that. I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about our protector development and what the mission is there, and kind of tell us a little bit
yeah,
about that organization, how what that's all about.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Our protector development, the new show in town for this guy. Back in December, yeah, I started our Protector LLC, and I was just like, I don't know where this is going, but the big man upstairs was directing traffic and saying, hey, there's this Taylor Brands out there, really easy to get an LLC, just go do it. And so I did. And few short weeks later, I was writing the first book. God only knows when the devil comes for you, a second chance at life. And that to me is this walk through recovery with sobriety, finding my connection with God, so as my higher power, and going through the divorce and that pain and perspective, that loss,
Yeah.
trying to find myself again when I was like, all fat and just I'm sure the dog was like, it'd be really nice to walk more than like 100 yards, when you take me out. And so I came up with some different tools and ways of like, okay, maybe you start with 100 yards, and then the next day it's 200 yards, and then obviously you work your way up to 1,600 yards, you get close to a mile, and and so yeah, it's kind of just a quick way of pulling yourself out of the darkness. It's got some ways to look at life when you lose your Fortune 500 job, and it's like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
And
right.
it's like, well, try to have a God-given purpose, similar to you, like the catalyst of things for you to write and start this podcast and everything else you're doing in life. And you're like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not supposed to like drive 20 minutes, get in a cubicle or whatever, fill out my TPS reports and like try to make money and then go home and do it all over again tomorrow. Like
Right.
that doesn't, I mean, the hamster wheel is always going to be there if I need to go back to it.
That's right.
And actually the other day it was, yeah, I had a buddy reach out. Hey, you want to come back? And I'm like, "No, I'm good." And it's one of those that I'm just so full of life today. So yeah, so basically at the end of the day, leadership consultancy, looking at, developing leaders, just like we knew, like in our military time, the Iron Mikes of the world, like follow me, let's go. Like, you've heard how many guys, be like, what was the military really like? And you're like, yeah, it was this, it was that. I think I could have done that. And you're like, all right, you want to get put through the ringer? You want me to make you a better leader? Cause I know what it's like to lead 750 people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it certainly isn't from my computer station,
Filling
on
out a
Zoom
TPS
or
report,
Teams.
right?
Yeah. It's like, let's put, 150 pounds of gear on. Let's test your physical aptitude. And then while that, it'll build your mental. And, you can do some amazing things after you press that threshold, a little bit. And,
Yeah.
you won't cry uncle when you miss lunch or whatever, whatever happens. And yeah, just using other tools that have worked, like, even the risk management team that we had, we built stuff from scratch. And a lot of it was just similar to, the smart guys could turn the ones and zeros into things, not this guy. North Dakota public education only gets you so far. But the aspect of, really just working on building trust through how you talk to people. It's one of those things where you just literally communicate, let people know that like, hey, you're going to have to work late tonight because, this happened, and hopefully you're not doing that at like 5 o'clock when they're packing their bag up.
Right.
Hopefully you do that early on enough to where they can start moving their schedule around. Or, the people that, you know your people well enough that it's like, hey, it's their anniversary, it's their birthday today. You might want to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, why don't you leave a little early? I know you're probably heading out to dinner with your family, whatever it may be.
Right.
And it's just showing you care. Like, pull your head out of your ass. None of us are that big of a deal. None of us are special and, got it all figured out. Today's the first day that I've ever been this old, and it's first day I've ever been this young, right now kind of thing. So it's like,
Sure.
don't take yourself so seriously. Actually, my youngest daughter told me this. She was probably like, I don't know, 8. She's like, Dad, why you take yourself so seriously? None of us get out of this alive. And I was like, what TV show have you been watching?
I
Kind
know
of thing.
that's pretty.
And put me in check, like just like right there.
That's pretty insightful for a young kid,
Yeah,
But
and
it's
to see her
true.
today, yeah, she's like 17 and she's just crushing it,
Yeah.
like still in high school, but's got a job. She goes to church with her older sister. They go to Bible study together. Shoot, she even goes to church with her boyfriend. I mean, like, what have you ever heard of that?
Right.
And
Right.
so proud dad moments. And I don't get to take credit for any of it, because like we're kind of, like estranged slightly, from that perspective. And to see it though, I'm just like, proud dad moments for
Yeah.
sure.
Sure.
It's special. And yeah, life's good. Life's really good.
That's good. That's good. And I think it's important for folks to find their sense of purpose or meaning in whatever it is that they're doing. And I don't just mean your job, your 9 to 5 job or whatever. Just what is it that you're doing with your life? There's got to be some purpose to it. Maybe you're raising a family. Maybe you have a job that's super important. You're contributing to your community. You're a police officer,
Yeah.
fireman, or any of those types of things. Or there's any number of things, but there's something that gives us a sense of purpose. Something that we wake up in the morning and it's like I got to go take care of this because this is my why I'm getting
Yeah.
up this morning. And I've found through talking to other veterans that when they don't have that, it feels like, what the hell am I even getting out of bed for? Like, what am I even doing today? And, in your case, you felt like you were kind of led in this direction The big man upstairs, like you said, was leading you in the right direction. Not everyone is as receptive, I guess, maybe to that type of guidance. And, I'm sure it's there. It's just we're not all receptive. And that I think is a struggle for some folks to figure out what is it that I'm supposed to be doing with myself. Yeah, sure. We talked about earlier, if that person that you lost was to see you today, seeing you down in that dark hole or wherever you're finding yourself, they'd come and drag you out and then smack you in the back of the head because they'd be like, "What the hell are you doing?" Right?
Right.
But sometimes it's just not that easy to figure out what you're supposed to be doing, or the thing that you feel like you're supposed to be doing, no one's going to pay you to do. So like you still got to put food on the table, right?
That
So
right there, you struck that's a gold mine,
yeah,
because I agree, for me, very fortunate to, be, retired, and disabled once you lose that job, right? Like I had a little bit to fall back on.
sure.
And I mean, it's certainly, I think it's like a seventh of what I was making, like over time and space. So like it is certainly, you gotta gotta be practical, you gotta live within, your means. But I look at it now for me is like, if you don't know what that is, like you don't like, I call it the war of purpose for
Mm-hmm.
me. It's like, so like building yourself so you don't break whenever that darkness is going to come, whatever it looks like,
Yeah.
is it a divorce? Is it a loss of a child, a brother? Is it, whatever it is, like you are so ready to go that it doesn't matter. Like you just like, throw it in the rucksack. All right, let's keep moving forward. And it's this, and it's, you just have to like be like, oh, I don't know what it is. Well, right now, like when you wake up, I call it 4 a.m. courage. Like, so like I started realizing certain times when I was like writing, reading, missing bills or whatever, like I was like 4:21 in the morning, 4:22 in the morning. I'm like, I'm not setting an alarm ever. Like, why am I getting up like at this time? So then I started reading the Bible and like Googling like 4:21, like scripture and so forth. And it was this aspect of like, when the Lord calls you, when he awakens you, you don't go back to bed. Like you get up and go to the gym. Like, it's probably one of those,
Yeah.
like how many of us like, aren't in the shape we were in, whatever, a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, like, right. Like, yeah, check.
Yep.
And, and you're just focus on that. Focus on like drinking more water. I mean, I'm terrible. Like, do not like water. It's like fight all day long. But if this is empty, I know I'm like one closer to,
Yeah. Right.
where I want to be. But it's, yeah, focus on those things. Like you're like, okay, like, well, I don't want to get out of bed. All right, well, get a gallon jug next to your bed and at least like fill your cup up every now and then. Drink some water. Okay, that's a start. Then maybe like wash your nasty butt, like, every couple days, maybe you go a week without doing it because you're so sorry on yourself.
Yeah. Right.
But like just take certain steps, like one step, like, even if you took like one step today, just take 2 steps tomorrow. And I guess to me, that's that aspect of it. And know like that when you see yourself in a certain spot, you're like, I can't remember what movie it was like, well, maybe it was with Jack Nicholson, like where he's like, what if this is as good as it gets? Maybe that's the name of the movie. As good as it gets. But he comes out of like a therapist's office, and everyone's in there,
Yeah.
like one person's like riddled with this, the other, and like they all look at him. And he's like, what if this is as good as it gets? And if you're doing something you don't love, like it's okay to like, like take a loss, like, like take a few hits to your pride and ego and go do what you want to do, like go
Mm-hmm.
be whatever you want to be. I mean, that was the thing for me. I think like starting the business was like a fear, right? Like, cause like, it's like, well, am I going to get paid for it? Like, like you start investing in yourself, but like we sit there and go to college. Nowadays, I mean, shoot, my oldest is in college. I think she'll have $150,000 public education when it's all done. And I'm like, if you invested 150,000 into coursework, different things like, if you want to be a motivational speaker, I know you don't have to spend $150,000. Now, some people won't listen to you because like, you don't have a story, but I mean, we all have a story inside of us. I mean, we all have a book inside of us. Like
Yep.
it's one of those things. It's like, but do you have like that intestinal fortitude to finish it? to go sit in the library. I mean, nowadays we don't have to. Everybody's got a phone or whatever to Google and, get a notepad and write things down. But that's the biggest thing is people are lazy. We love comfort. Like, like you don't have to go anywhere anymore. Everything's right here, minus going to the bathroom.
Right.
And so, yeah, you just sit there and, and I call it doom scrolling, where you're just like, woo, like going through it all. But yeah, I get it. Like, my goal or whatever when I was, I don't know, Cadet Reichert was, to be a full bird colonel brigade commander, because we had a family friend that was that,
Okay.
and I was like, success in the military is at 06 and I'm in a brigade equivalent of command. I retired as lieutenant colonel, no battalion command, no, whatever, 05. And for me, I was like, I failed miserably. I missed the mark by, get 5 years in time, space, and, promotion and so forth. And I carried that until probably a year ago, maybe, and it's like, shoot, like how many people volunteer for the military? Let's like do some quick math here. Right.
Right.
And we're not talking about a draft, we're talking about raising your right hand and volunteering to do something for something greater than yourself, and then maybe taking that ultimate sacrifice and, and it's paid with one's life.
Yeah.
And to me now, like when I look at that, I would still do that today now that I'm back on the horse riding in the right direction. Before I'd be like, oh, hell no, I'm never doing that again. But like when you pull yourself out of that hole, like you have that same drive you had, like thinking how many years ago when you enlisted everything. Like, it's just like, yeah, you have that fear. You're like, oh man, I don't know what this is going to be like. You get a little taste and you're like, oh, I actually don't like that. But then like you wake up the next day and you're like, that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I did something that I never thought I would do,
Yeah.
I never thought, airborne school. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Like making it through Ranger school, like never in my wildest dreams ever thought that was going to, happen.
Right. And,
being with certain units or working with certain people, like, it's just like anything else. Like all of us, when you want something, like if you want it that bad, like you're going to put the work in.
That's right.
I guess if you don't want it that bad, you get what you get. And that to me is like, what's the saying? You can lead a horse to water, but like can't make it drink. Well, like you can push its head and as far down in there as you, and they still don't have to drink. So
it's gonna end up drowning the horse, though. I think that's the point, right? Is that you're gonna be stuck in that position that you don't want to be in. You hate it. It sucks. You don't want to be there, and it's sucking your soul out as you're doing all that. So I think the key is to realize that your mission, like, yeah, fine, stick in that position, because obviously you need money to pay bills and
right.
buy food and keep a roof over your head and all that kind of stuff. Stay there.
Yeah.
Don't just like quit because you heard some guys on a podcast tell you to. Like that may not be the best.
Yeah, no,
best
very
advice.
true, very true.
So like you might want to stick in that position, but realize that your new mission in life is to figure out what your purpose is, what you're passionate about, what's going to make you get up in the morning and say, hell yeah, I'm ready to go tackle this day. And right. I think that's the way to look at it, is figure out what that is and attack it like it's a mission.
Yeah.
Plan it out. Say, hey, there's somebody else out there who is maybe in a position that I want to be in. They're successful doing whatever the thing is. All right, let's go take a look at that person, figure out how they got there. Pretty easy to do these days. You can go on LinkedIn, find a person who's in that field and like look at their background, their education.
Look at it and then reach out to them and like ask them to be your mentor. Like that's the thing to me now. Like if there's something I'm afraid of, whatever it is, like a lot of times now it's like, shoot, even reaching out to you, like, look at all the episodes and everything, like the podcast that we started, we got like 6, like, and it's like, oh man. And then you sent me that awesome, I don't know what you want to call layout or whatever. Sure. And I was like, holy cows, it's so put together. And, I'm like sitting here with like my legal pad and, So if you're afraid of something, like that door isn't locked. I mean,
No,
all it is, it's just, you just need to go up to it and go like, I'm scared, push on it. And it opens right up.
that's right.
And that's what it's all about. Like, it's literally like, if you have doubt or you have fear in something, like there is an amazing blessing on the other side of that. And just like you said, in the purpose aspect of it, like I was talking to a gal today, actually, accountant wise, and we were just talking about things. And I was like, hey, I know you probably like really don't want to be, a tax advisor. Like, what are you really passionate about? And she was like, I'm a really good cook. I want to have my own restaurant. And I'm like, well, what's the holdup?
Yeah.
And it's like, do you work in a restaurant part time so you can continue to hone your skills? Like, is it a money thing? And it came down to fear. It was just fear of like, what happens if because that's money, it's
Hmm.
it's like, well, what happens if I fail? I was like, well, if you never try, you're always going to fail. Like,
You already failed.
like, yeah,
Exactly.
like, and so it was so fun to like just be like, I'm like, where's this place gonna be? Let's breathe this, let's speak it into existence. And it's like, I'm in Florida. I'm like, fantastic. Okay, general vicinity. I'm writing it down because I will hunt you down in 2 years. Like, eat this Asian food that you're gonna make at this. And like, if we don't do that, like, well, just think about it. I mean, that's one less like amazing restaurant to go eat in. We all need to eat,
Yep.
right? And so, yeah, it's just wild and crazy. We all have this gift, whatever it may be. And if we don't share it with everybody else, it's kind of selfish, right? Like, it's this aspect, like, because we're too lazy or scared or whatever it is,
Hmm.
but you're being selfish,
Yeah.
like share your purpose with the world, and, let us all benefit from it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great way to look at it because we do all have something that we're good at. Something that maybe you're not the best at it. There might be you're not pro level, whatever, but
Yeah.
but who cares? You're still really good at something, and I don't know what that something is, but figure out what it is and figure out a way that maybe someone might want to pay you for it. Like being a cook. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, you can make great meals at your home for yourself and for your family, and that's
Right.
that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great. They'll eat well and they'll always be happy and well fed and all that kind of stuff too. But you can also open up a restaurant. you can
Yeah.
you can make
I
food
mean, I,
for
I think that's just so cool. I mean, like, to me,
yeah,
I am not a cook
right.
by any means. Like, my favorite thing is like cereal and milk and bread, peanut butter jelly, a little butter, whatever, soup. Really good at that, cracking a can of soup.
Sure.
So yeah, when I look at people that can cook, because you got to plan it, right? You got
Yeah.
to go get the ingredients, you got to prep. Like, there's this whole time analysis thing with, cooking. And then, like, most people want it hot. I'm so used to like cold food that like I really don't like my food like scalding hot.
No, I
It's
don't
funny,
either.
like,
I,
yeah. And is it because how many meals have we eaten that are, never heated up? Like,
I,
like
I,
I didn't heat up an MRE for years. I didn't even know like you could heat one up because they never let us in
I,
most schools. Then you didn't have time.
I preferred using the heater packet to like keep myself warm. Like when it was real cold out and you're
Yeah,
out in the woods or whatever,
totally.
it's like
Yeah,
yeah, I need a little extra warm, so I'm gonna use this thing for
right.
me. Sometimes
No,
it's like
no.
scalding, but whatever, it's fine.
Hey,
It's
see,
heat.
I'm like, I wasn't smart enough, like, to even, I just was just like throwing it away, like, because I'm like, whatever.
Well,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love it.
yeah,
So many things we forget about. It's only been 3 years, coming up here since I retired. And yeah, it's just, it's like a life that never happened almost, but then it's just so vivid, like right there, at a moment's notice.
it's like two different
And
worlds almost. Like
yeah.
almost like you woke up from a dream and it's like, well, man, I did some weird shit. like
Yeah.
why was I doing all that stuff? Like that was crazy.
Yeah.
But then you think back, it's like no, that was actually real, and
Yeah.
that's just how it is. But
Right.
I think first off, thank you for sharing your story, sharing your journey. I know you have you mentioned a book that's coming out, or it just will have been out a little while
Yeah.
after this episode
Well,
comes
yeah, I
out.
think it'll have a few weeks of release by the time this comes out, so
Yeah.
that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be super cool. I mean, the website, ourprotectordevelopment.com will be live, and it'll have, whatever products we have out at that time. Book 2 probably will be coming out shortly after this airs, I believe, but we won't throw any dates out yet because
Sure.
nothing's in production for book 2, but it is in page design for those who know what that is. And we'll go through probably a couple more edits before it actually heads into production.
Perfect.
And yeah, a lot of cool other stuff. There's a book 3. Got a writing coach now, because I guess probably 1 and 2 weren't as good as they could have been. Definitely not as good as this bad boy reading this one here, because you definitely laying down some massive wordage, as I like to say, and describing things get very, very easy to visualize, very vivid. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to what comes out. I think probably in the fall sometime, looking at for an online course that'll come out as well,
Okay.
to kind of pair up with the tools that come out of the books.
Great.
And excited to see, where, if I'm on out east, like, getting to visit you and everything else. And, just continuing to, meet all the beautiful people in the world that, we're all connected. What's it? The 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing,
Right.
And,
Yeah, you'd be surprised
so,
how few degrees there are between people, especially when you're talking military with all the moves that people do
right.
and everything like that. So, man, Ryan, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, though, hearing about your story and, kind of learning about your background and some of the lessons that you take away from it, too. I think will really resonate with some of the listeners and, hopefully pushes people in the right direction and gets them on the right track. So, I do want to thank you for taking the time to come on and being vulnerable, sharing your story and your background and everything. And it really was a great time. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Scott. I greatly appreciate the opportunity as well.